The ringing of a handbell signals that it's my turn for dokusan. Dokusan is a Japanese word to mean you're having an interview with the abbot or abbess or the official person of a temple. I'm at a monastery in Japan. I pick up a small mallet and strike the cast iron bell in front of me. Once, then twice, to respond to the bell. I rise and hurry down the long hall off of tatami mats. Tatami mats are those reed mats you see in tea ceremonies, that what in Japanese temples, there's like the floor for living spaces. So I hurry down a long hall of tatami mats with eheis, or little, like small wooden with the person's name on it that marks this long hall is called the ihai, the ihai-do, which is where the Sangha members who have deceased have little altars and they line up. So I hurry down, and each of them altars is about 2 feet by 3 feet deep or so. And they're silently witnessing the swish of the slick cloth of my priest's robes as my feet shuffle quickly down. At the end of the ihai-do, 3 steps rise up, at the bottom of which I perform a short gassho, a bow, with my hands together. I then take off my zagu, which is my cloth that's is on my wrists, and there's a certain way that I hold it, lick down the other end, move from left to right, place those ends that are almost touching at the bottom from where I'm holding of the tatami mat, lay it down, bring it back, put it back down to make what was a long rectangular piece of cloth now a square spot on the tatami to protect my robes, because traditionally you just wear the robes 24/7, except when you're sleeping, then you just wear your kimono. So it's a protection for the robes. And classically, as a monastic, classically, you have one robe and one bowl. So this is, you don't want to get it too dirty, right? So I quickly do 3 full prostration, which in the Zen way, we come down, we raise our hands above our ears. The significance, or I don't know what's the word, the idea is that the Buddha is standing on my hands, and I raise him in reverence and down. So 3 full prostration, pick up the zagu or the bowing cloth, put it back, fold it, put it back on my left wrist, and quickly go up the stairs to now enter the room in which the abbot, in this case, Sekihara Roshi, and he's the abbot of a 500-year-old training monastery in the Soto Zen tradition in Obama, Japan. I just arrived there not too many days before to do a ango, or a rain retreat, a 90-day practice period. And I had come there after leaving the monastery in the United States, where I had lived for almost 3.5 years, where when I asked to ordain, I thought I would live there forever, like I would be a monastic forever. The calling to give my life fully to Dharma and practice. And yet, due to racism, I had to leave. And then when I arrived at this temple, right, it's a small temple at that point. There's like 12 people living there. And it's a temple that Sake Harada has had. This is 2006. And Sake Harada had had foreigners, which is kind of not that often in Japanese temples since the 1960s. So he was used to foreigners. And there was another white American priest who was practicing, who I knew a little bit from when I first moved to the monastery. I lived here in the US. And at that time, she was a lay person also. And as we were practicing, I'm what's known as a form queen. You know, is perfect. You know, I spend many hours. And in Japan, actually, everyone is perfect. So I fit in pretty well, even though my perfection was low grade compared to they were so fast with their zagu and so perfect, you know, and everything is really fast because everyone's usually sitting waiting for you in, you know, in their lotus position. So you need to do things fast so that you minimize how long they have to sit still, right? So this person and I were often compared because we were the two American nuns. And also we were similar height, so we were matched up a lot. And she was always being compared to me, right? And also she just didn't have as much monastic practice as I had. So her forms were not as tight. And she had started to say things aside to me, like, you are no good. Why are you here? You know, you're a piece of trash. But she would never say it around other people. And it started to bug me, right? And so when I went in for this interview, it was like the question of my life. Really, the question of my life. So I said to Roshi, Dojo Roshi, I said, yeah, Dojo, if you have done any martial arts, it means the practice place. So even though his Dharma name is Sake Harada, we just call him Dojo Roshi. Roshi of the practice place, basically. So I said, Roshi, why is it that hatred has followed me all my life? Why is it that hatred has followed me all my life? I'm from Vietnam, and in Vietnam, my parents never married, so then I was really not accepted in Vietnam. And so, you know, he is considered, or he was at this point, considered a truly enlightened person in Japan. And so I came in with this question. He says to me, no, as in K-N-O-W, no hatred completely. Picks up the bell, rings it briskly, which means done, get out of here. Right? So I bow, go back out, put my zagu down again, bow 3 more times, and then zip down the ihaido again with those faces, or actually not faces, but the ihais witnessing. Not the answer I was expecting, especially as the experience I've had in America in monastic practices, when you know, for the most part, practice discussions are 15, 20 minutes, sometimes half an hour, you know, and there's like an exchange and, you know, they give you advice and stuff. I would tell you that my mind stopped. My mind just basically went, huh? Right? So it stopped. And, you know, in retrospect, I would tell you, I can't tell you the length of time. But it wasn't like instantly. I mean, it stopped and I had a sense of it, but I didn't, the rest of it I'm going to say to you, I don't remember the time frame. But within, like, I don't know, day or two. I realized that all the thinking I've had about it, including why is she so mean to me? Why are white people XYZ? And I've been an activist, and you know, how racism, this and that. Not that it was invalid, mind you, but I realized for me, what happened there was I realized that I was not attending to the hurt, to the pain I was experiencing. This person just being mean to me. You know, I realized that my child mind or sense was really like, why? Why? I just don't get it. And looking for reason. What have I done to her? And or the thing about, oh, this is racist, blah blah blah. Right? And so my mind stopped and it realized that I was, for me, at that time, that these thoughts were actually ways of a defense against just feeling the hurt and the sadness of being a target of meanness and hatred. Now, the next day, I went back to Dokusan. And even before I could ask a question, which is kind of the format, you know, usually the Roshi just waits for you to bring in your question. That's kind of the Zen interview format. But before I could even open my mouth to say, what, you know, he went on for 40 minutes. The day before, I was in there for like less than 5 minutes, if that much, right? He went on for 40 minutes about the history of Shakyamuni's life, his enlightenment, and early Buddhist history. Then rang the bell, and I had to go. I was like, what? What? I will tell you that I have said other things about this in the past, and then as I was preparing for this talk, I thought, oh, it's 2006. How many years is that, people? 15 years, huh? Oh, because I've always like, why? Why did he have to tell me the history of Buddhism, for goodness sake, right? And then I thought, oh, how the Buddha and all the centuries of these practitioners, right? They too were searching for the same thing, the end to our suffering. I will say the thing that I see, and it's not, you know, not just for this talk, but really, I think a kernel, it's not the only kernel, mind you, and it's what I want to talk about tonight, is that I was looking for some master. I have to tell you, I asked the same question to an arhat in Thailand, you know, after the Ongo, and I went, right? I've been asking that question to different people a long time. So this is, you're getting the wisdom of 15 years tonight. Well, if you want to call it wisdom, the sharing. That it was that I kept searching for the answer outside of myself. And by that, I don't mean that there isn't wisdom or there isn't support outside. However, for me, it takes, as Dogen, the founder of Soto Zen in Japan, said, it takes taking the backward step to turn inward, to clarify our own suffering and to attend to it. Bell Hooks, in her essay, Contemplation and Transformation, from Buddhist Women on the Edge. It's an old book, and I read this when I first went to that monastery in the United States, and literally have carried that Xerox copy around. I can point to where it is right now. For one line, she says, a culture of domination like ours says to people, there is nothing in you that is of value. Everything of value is outside you and must be acquired. This is the message of devaluation. I didn't think about it before, but let me go ahead and just put that in the chat. They come out? Yep. So at some point, we have to value ourselves. Sorry, I was trying to get rid of the chat and now I lost my page. Okay. At some point, we have to value ourselves, and practice can support this. And to me, this is a healing from the hatred of racism. Is this very thing that I'm calling a returning to wholeness, to completeness, to our sense of fullness. And I would say that, people have studied with me recently, especially around the Dharma being anti-racist or lotus rising from the mud, that I've talked about wholeness. And in my sense of Mahayanist Buddhism, and Soto Zen in particular, is that we actually start with wholeness. That our Buddha nature is something that isn't a thing or thing to become. It's a sense that we already have everything we need. That we are already complete and whole. And oppressions such as racism, homophobia, classism, etc., part of its work is to devalue us and tell us that we're not whole and complete. And so I know that in talking about it, sometimes people say to me, I don't feel that. I don't know what that is, right? And I think, I know that I have had a sense of lack, right? So recently I was thinking about that. Do you guys know what an Enso is? E-N-S-O? An Enso. Very big symbol in Zen in particular, Japanese Zen. It's called an Enso. Usually, here's another one. It's Thich Nhat Hanh. I don't know, probably this is Jakusho Kwong, and he might have done that himself. So also in Japanese calligraphy, if you practice it, making an Enso is a big thing. And in certain documents, you need to make them. And so it's a practice of, in one complete breath, you give wholeheartedly, plop it down, make the circle. And it's a symbol for enlightenment, completeness, Now, the reason I wanted to talk about what I'm calling Enso Wholeness is that you can see that there's a beginning and an end. However, there are no closing in the circle. There are some Enso that close, but for the most part, they look kind of like this. So I'm gonna go off of that. I'm not a Japanese scholar, nor am I a Japanese calligraphy master. So this is just me using this symbol. Because to me, it is a completeness that is about one, just throwing yourself into that one stroke. It's also literally saying that in making this stroke, we are saying there's an inside and an outside. Just as in life, we have to say that there's a me and there's a you, or there's a me and there's a we. There's hatred and there's non-hatred. There's love, there's not love. So in a way, to make the mark is to say that there is this and there isn't that. So there is suffering, and then there's non-suffering. And then they coexist, and in some sense, having a mark determines that, right? Or can differentiate that. That's a better way of putting it. And notice the opening to me is that this is about that it's not a closed thing. Like suffering is not forever, nor is suffering separate from non-suffering. Okay? Which of course, you know, they always say, the Buddha says, I teach one thing, suffering and the end of suffering. And many of you have heard from me. I often say, that's two things to me, right? But I think it's this sense that we know suffering, and to know what suffering is, we know what non-suffering is. And so we have to know our suffering to know how we cannot suffer. And so this space defines it, and it gives us possibility. This opening is that there's possibility, and this opening is about that life, or our practice is about the negotiation between self and other, between good and bad, or more correctly, non-duality. That we, on a certain level, we have to say suffering, not suffering, good, bad. But in life, mostly we're working, or our living, our experience is the negotiation of duality. So non-duality, I'm proposing to you tonight, is not that there's no duality, or that, oh, I'm just going to practice to get rid of duality, because you could try. But once you leave your room or your meditation cushion or floor or standing or whatever you're doing for your meditation posture, you know, duality will come back and hit you in the butt or whatever, right? Some racist person will show you duality for sure. So our practice is to learn to negotiate, and to have a sense that when we feel that this is a closed circle, we have to remember that there's a space to get out. Or when we are stuck in thinking the absolute, we remember that there is a necessity of defining. Or if not the necessity, then there is definition. I don't know. I take it back. I'm not sure about necessity. So in a way, to me, helps us to accept that shit happens, like racism, and we don't practice to escape racism, which doesn't mean we are not working towards this end, mind you. But I myself personally do not think racism will end in my lifetime, right? And so, why working towards the end, the reality is that how do I negotiate it so that there's an alleviation or there's some way that it's heading that way? Because just to say, well, it shouldn't be here, because I know a lot of time when I experience racism, my go-to is it shouldn't have happened, right? Which is a way of keeping that sadness and that just like, fucking, hey, not again, right? Because that's my go-to, like as a defense, because it's so painful to think that, why, See, it already came out again. Why? Why? We know why. I know why. Because of racism. I know that. I know that. Because of the structure of white supremacy, racism is here in a very specific way in the United States, and that's what I'm talking about right now. Of course, there's racism in the world too. So our practice is not to pretend that there are no markings, like making a mark, that it doesn't exist or that it shouldn't be there. I hear myself say that often too. Shouldn't happen. Our practice is to remember that when others confine us, we have to remember the spaciousness, or that it's that they can try and confine us, but there is a way out of that. So, our practice in a way is to ask ourselves and policymakers, how do these markings bring more suffering or less suffering? And I'll propose to you tonight as a practice is that we who are continuously being told that we're not whole and complete is to practice knowing wholeness and completeness. Sometimes we think, in my experience, that I and others have a sense that I can just think myself out of, right? Or I just have to remember wholeness. And I think that's useful. But I also think as practice, we have to find ways to know it. Because in the knowing, and by knowing here, I don't mean just an intellectual knowing, but a visceral knowing. So that we have real confidence that it's true and possible. Because that's the best way to thrive and not just to survive. Is to know it so that no matter what they throw at you, you have the wherewithal to say, I don't have to accept that. Or this is a true as in condition. And where is it that there's still a point in which I don't have to suffer, or I can suffer less, or I can create less suffering for others? Which for me includes attending to my own what the fuckness things, right? That wish to like deny reality. So that's what, to me, might seem really, I don't know, simplistic in the meditation to just say, oh, what can I feel the wholeness and the completeness of my breath? But to me, in Zen we say one moment of zazen, which means that you're completely with something We're not experiencing it, you're not observing it, you're not witnessing. You're just completely in life, with life. A moment of zazen is worth like better than none at all, but it's like a moment is the epitome of it all. So I think we have to actively do that as a way to attend to ourselves, right? Not just attend to our sadness and all the hurtness of things, but just also to attend to the possibility and the fullness of our experience, you know, or another, I think it might be the same talk, because I didn't plan to do this, so I didn't look it up, but the same writing from Bell Hooks. You know, I remember it was a big deal when I read the line, pretty sure it's from the same one, where she said, you know, I realize, I'm paraphrasing some, I realize I was more than my pain. I remember reading that and going, what? Because at that time, I just felt so like my whole life is pain. And how to escape pain as opposed to attending to my pain and suffering so that I can leave it behind and thrive. I don't know about behind. Leave, attend to it so that it doesn't overcome me. So, by the way, the Enso, I'm not sure what En means, but the So in Enso means togetherness or mutuality. So how is it that we can mutually be with reality and our sense of wholeness? All right. What else do I have to say? This is not anything in my, I have like diverted from my talk as written. So let me go find out how I want to end this. I have here that the fourth noble truth, I have a whole thing about them, but I'll just share this part. I wonder if the fourth noble truth, which is, by the way, the path, right? I'll say the third. The third noble truth I have here. Oh, the first. All right, I'll say them all. First noble truth, of course, is that in life there's suffering. That's a classic. In the engaged version, I like to say that because it's a restorative model, that there's harm and hurt in life. Hurt and harm. So here I have, first noble truth is where you don't want to be, where it's uncomfortable. So the training is to stay. Second noble truth is it's unknown, the cause of your pain. So it's unknown to you if you don't pay attention, especially to how you are taught not to notice. So paying attention is the training. And then the third noble truth is to actually see the unknown as possibility, or the space, right? In a way, sometimes I feel like I live confined by the marking. I think I know what it is to suffer, or I think I know what it is not to suffer. I think I should be paying attention more to this part, the possibility, the creativity of the negotiation. So the training is to be open in heart and mind. And then the fourth then is wholeness as trust. Training to trust our wholeness again. Trust in our humanness, that being human is enough and is okay. Lately, I've been talking about well enough. Not good enough, because good has that right and wrong, but well enough. It also has that sense of health. Is this well enough? Am I well enough? You know, not as a sense of lack, more as a sense of, oh, Yeah. Okay. Well enough. As a starting point, as a basic, as a home spot. In my group, you're welcome to unmute, and then I just say part of it, and it's not quite a call and response, more like an echo, so that you can dedicate the merit yourself too, right? So you're welcome to unmute, and then I'll just say, and then you echo me. For any merit we accrued tonight.
For any merit we accrued tonight.
Dedicate to our own suffering.
Dedicate to our own suffering.
Our Sangha's members' suffering.
Our Sangha's members' suffering.
All beings suffering.
All beings suffering.
We all be able to thrive.
We all be able to thrive.
10 directions and the 3 times.
In the 10 directions. 3 times.
If you're interested, it means everywhere, the 10 direction, but classically there is 10. North, south, east, west, northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest, and then up and down. Those are the 10 in Buddhism. And then, of course, the 3 times is past, present, and future. So, all times and all space. That's the idea. Thank you very much. Please take good care of yourselves. Be safe, bring safety.